Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining this HESA webinar. I am going to hand you over to Dawn and Richard now for the real reason you're all here, not to just listen to me. So Dawn and Richard, over to you.
Thank you, folks. Thank you, everyone, for attending. It's always reassuring to see an audience. Don't get me wrong, I'd still present this to myself, but all the same, nicer to have a crowd. So as myself, I'm Richard Clayton. I'm COO here at Namos. My background is in higher education. I spent the best part of 12 years, I think, all told, doing a whole host of roles, but the last one was Head of Application Management at University of Birmingham, where it's fair to say, and Dawn, who will introduce herself in a second, we had a Heath Robinson solution for aspects of HESA. So when joining Namos, it was my absolute attestation that there was a better way of doing it. And hopefully what we're presenting today is evidence of that. With that, I'll pass to Dawn.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dawn Morgan. I also have a HE background, so about 12 years as a HR professional working in different universities, submitting HESA returns, so understanding the kind of pain that you have at this time of the year from that side of things, and joined Namos earlier on this year, and this is one of the projects that I particularly enjoy working with.
She's paid to say that, no, joking. Folks, this can be a really dull subject, HESA staff return, so can I ask that everyone raises a hand, speaks up, asks questions in the chat. Let's try and keep it as interactive as humanly possible. Not to say that it isn't fun listening to us talk at you for the remaining 57 minutes. But I'm sure if you're asking questions, there'll be peers and contemporaries who are on this call who equally may be thinking about it. So please do speak up at any point. Okay. With that, I'm going to try and keep the slides fairly quick and give all the hard work to Dawn, who will take you through the actual system demonstration. And in true presentation style, somebody just confirm, thumbs up, Sam, Dawn, we can see a screen of, yeah, perfect. I haven't just shared the wrong window. So we've introduced ourselves. Let's just spend a little time introducing Namos. So for those who aren't aware, Namos, we're an Oracle partner, been going for over 12 years ourselves, actually. We focus on speed to value. So we are not the partner you go to for a 5-year implementation that doesn't yield anything at the end. We're the team that can get you live on whether that's within 12 months on a full HR payroll replacement, or whether that's, in the case of this, a little over 4 weeks to do a HESA implementation. With that, you've heard from Dawn and myself in terms of our customer background. That's quite common at Namos. We pride ourselves on being customer centric. And with that, I have no shame in saying I have an active recruitment policy of taking people from end users and people who've kind of walked a mile in the shoes of people. In the case of higher education, just a little under 10 of us actually now have got a direct worked in HE background, and probably a further 10, 20 on top of that who worked across higher education projects as well. And that's part of 150 UK, over 150 UK plus FTE as well. So we don't offshore, we are all UK residents. With that, we only do Oracle. So the technology you're seeing today is not something that we've just strung together on our own infrastructure, anything like that. Everything you see is backed by a tier 1 vendor in Oracle, which means it's completely secure, it's completely scalable, and it's trusted by hundreds of thousands of users, customers, and users worldwide. And we offer a complete consultancy offering, so we don't just give you an application and ride off into the sunset. Our mantra is to make sure that you actually are adopting it and getting the benefits of. I won't read the right-hand side, suffice to say, award-winning and all of our swim badges, that there are other slides I could show on that. Specifically to higher education, I spoke there about our customer background. Those consultants have worked in that sector for years. It does give us a affinity, and it means that some of the other things you can see here are based on our knowledge of the sector. So that's not just the higher education pack of tools, accelerators, HESA being one of them, or our active engagement in the community, such as HESA. But that's also, even the smallest things of, we know what it's like to put in a benefits case that leads to a paper that goes through however many governance boards to request funding. Having the predictability of a partner that understands those complexities of the sector and can deliver to a fixed cost, fixed scope, fixed outcome, meaning that you're not going back to a council or whatever various governance body to ask for more funds. It's not good for us. It's not good for you either. So we recognise that, and that's why we adapt our pricing accordingly. And that growing HE customer base, all of those clients there have either in the last 12 to 18 months taken up or are actively taking up our services. Just to give you an idea of scope, that top half are all HR or finance implementations. All of the people that we've taken live so far sit within our managed services function, as well as Birmingham City University and University of St Andrews. And what we're going to be talking about today is our HESA product, which Greenwich, Heriot-Watt and University of Birmingham are live on. That's what they'll have just submitted their this year's return on. And we're partway through implementation at Salford. They'll be going live next year with our HESA tool, and indeed at Imperial, where we've just kicked off a HR, finance, research administration, payroll, and HESA implementation. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions, so it must all sound credible. Happy to, of course, take questions on who we are and what we do and who we do it for. The HESA solution itself. So I know at least one of you folks have got an Oracle HR system in HCM. Where it is a full implementation of HCM, so you've got an Oracle HR system, we can do the whole end-to-end of the HESA solution. So that's configuring the right fields within HCM or within your HR system, generating the staff IDs automatically and getting the extracts out ready to feed into our application. For those who aren't on Oracle HCM, that's not a problem at all. This is all value add for those who are, but for those who aren't, we do still have the full end-to-end solution of what it takes to configure all your field properties, taking that data and ultimately producing a valid XML extract. What our solution does, furthermore, regardless of that source, is all the bits in the middle that we know all you folks diligently have to do, often unrewarded, unrecognized behind closed doors, to make sure that that data that you load actually ends up with the right XML output, the right file that's going to represent your university consistently. And we do that through all of those other bits in this cycle. So we're taking that data, we can take it in any format. So whether that's CSV, XML, direct from your HCM system, if that's what you've got, we model it straight away in the HESA prescribed format, having done all of those mappings. So you could take in any source value. So I'm going to give a random one. If your campus ID extracts from HR by default as a full string, you take that full string and the tool will map it to the single character or 3-character value. We know as well that there are many stakeholders involved in the HESA return. The tool, what Dawn will be showing you, can slice and dice that data to send it out to all of those different user communities. So whether that's at college level or school level, or you want to break it down by academic employment function, whatever it is, our tool can produce a report output so you can show that modeled HESA data in the format you need. We know as well that HESA are very prescriptive. I think that's the diplomatic term. There's no one on the call from HESA, so I'm sure others could choose other terms about what it is to do a valid return. And in the case of over 130 business rules, we will check that for you. So we'll check, is it a valid HESA return before you have to go anywhere near the HESA toolkit. We'll tell you the exact reason why. So the reason, which will be the business validation exception. And in the case of 95 of those, we'll fix it for you. So if there's a logical inference, and believe me, Birmingham, Greenwich, Heriot-Watt, Salford as well, and Imperial will have very definitive ideas on what those inferences are, and I'm sure you folks would have similar. You can toggle them on and off, but if you want the tool to fix it for you, it will. And I'm going to pluck a random one out the air. If, let's say, for instance, a couple of years ago, they introduced you could return multiple disabled fields. Well, guess what? You shouldn't be returning multiple disabled fields and have a have a value that says no disability defined or prefer not to disclose. I can't remember the term on that one. So the HESA tool would go, right, well, you've obviously got valid disabilities. Let's not tell HESA in addition that you don't know what they are, and it would remove that for you. You can look through those and see, based on other universities' interpretation, on what's a reasonable inference. As part of the implementation as well, if you have more inferences that you make on your data, we'll happily consider them, because every time we make a fix in the solution for you, an enhancement to it, that's then rolled out to all those other institutions, and they can benefit from that as well. And ultimately, as I say, after doing all of that modeling, loading from your sourcing, correcting those rules, it can produce that extract in the valid HESA format. For those real HESA geeks amongst us, you know as well, it's not good enough to have, in HESA's eyes, a valid this year's return. They'll compare it against next year's. And in the case of our tool, if it sees that you've returned somebody in a previous year return, because you can use the tool as a repository for XML returns, it will say, right, you had these people, they're no longer in this year's return. I'm going to put them into this year's return with a closed off conftE on the point of the census window. So you won't be in that place of not knowing whether you, at the 11th hour, can produce a return that has the same hallmarks as last year. Okay. I'm hoping that you folks are either suspending belief for Dawn to demo, or and we haven't had dropouts to suggest that you've joined the wrong call or aren't enjoying what you're hearing. Has anybody got any questions at that point? No. Cool. Dawn, I think it's all on you to do a proper demo. Give me 2 seconds to finish off this. So just to say, what you've seen today is already live at 3 other institutions, partway there at 2 others. You are welcome to go to any of those institutions and talk to them about their experience with us. Sam and our marketing folks can talk about the commercial side. Suffice to say, we don't pitch this at something that is insurmountable. It's purposely intended to be something that's below most executive board sign-off limits. And because we're on G-Cloud 14, you can go for a single source agreement and get this live nominally within 4 weeks with us. And from a security sense, if there's IT people on the call, or you've got IT back at base who will, for good reason, scrutinize this is sensitive data, know that we're ISO 27001 certified. Everything that you're seeing is on Oracle Cloud infrastructure, so the same infrastructure that's supported by military organizations and central government is the technology that we built this on. You get a single instance, so you're not sharing data with other universities. You have your own implementation of it, and all of that data is hosted on UK data centers in the glamorous Slough. Sorry for those of you who may be from Slough. And single sign-on as well. So we can achieve single sign-on with Azure. We can embed it for those who may have HCM. We can embed it within there and use Oracle's role-based access control. Okay, I said I'd tee up Dawn. I said I'd be 15 minutes as well, so I'm bang on. Very quickly, if you are a HCM customer, your route into the app would look slightly different from what Dawn's going to show. So you would actually get a tile on your springboard. Based on all the normal role-based access control you'd press that and then you'd be straight into the app. No second sign-on, no supplementary passing of values. It just appears seamlessly within the window. But with that, I'm going to pass to Dawn, who will demonstrate from there on the same user experience as you would all potentially benefit from.
Thanks, Richard. I'll just share my screen. And where are we? There we go. Okay, is that everyone seeing the correct screen there? Thanks, Richard, for the thumbs up. Okay, so as Richard mentioned, if you don't have Oracle HCM, you'll be provided with a web link which will direct you to a sign-in page. And when you click sign in, it will take you directly into the HESA app. So this is how it will look on first logging in. You can see there are previous returns there that are stored within the app itself, which is a really useful functionality. You can pick up the configuration from those returns and include it in the new return that you create at the beginning of each HESA cycle. You can create a return from scratch, or you can duplicate an existing return. So if you duplicate an existing return, it will pull over the data that's within that return. So that's something you're probably more likely to use when you're in the process of making a submission. But at the beginning of each new HESA submission period, you would be creating a return. So what we'll do is take you through that process and then show you from beginning to end some of the functionality that Richard was talking about. So we'll click create. You can enter a return description. So we're just going to call this one HESA webinar. And what we're going to do is we're going to copy the config from another return so that all of the mappings and everything that we've already put in are brought into this return as well. So we're just going to copy that from this one here. And then we'll click on create. And what you'll be able to see then is you've got a new return at the top line. What we'll do at this point is go into edit, and that will then allow us to show the different information as to how the return's created. So step one is configuring the return. So the first part is your institutional values. So these will be plugged in for your relevant institution. Field properties. So this will provide a list of all the HESA fields for all parts of the return, and will give you a default value if there is a default value held. You can program in default values if you wanted to by clicking on the row and clicking on edit, and you can then change that default value to whatever you would prefer it to be, and then save once you've completed that action. From the actions drop down, you can also download a full list of those field names and with any default values that have been programmed in. So if you wanted to download that list and take it out of the app to do some checking, you can do that there all in one place. Then move into the field mappings, which is where a lot of the hard work then happens in terms of making sure that everything's correct. And you can see on the screen, we've got here ability to teach in Welsh. You've got a range of different source values, and then you've got the mapped numeric value that HESA expects to see as part of their return. You can search individual fields for this. So if you wanted to look at oh, I've picked up the wrong field name there. Apologies. Let's try. Yes. So you can search for a specific field and it will bring you up the source values and the mapped values that are already there. And again, as with the field properties, if you click on actions and download, you can download a full list of those field mappings so you can see what's already there in the system when you make a start.
I should say as well, Dawn, we keep these up to date for you year on year as well. We don't remove them as well. So the best is, of course, you'll update your source system with all new drop downs every HESA year. The reality is you may have some remnants from previous years. So we keep that mapping in there, and you could map from an old value, old list of value to a brand new one.
Thanks, Richard. So if you need to add any field mappings, you can do that from the next tab. So from here at the top, you can select any of the different fields that appear in the return, and you can then pick up one that you want to add. So you pick the field name, you add a source value. So if you find that your source system is pushing this out as just the digit 4, but you want it to be a 0, 4, you can then add that mapping value. And if you go back into field mappings and search for that field again, you can then see that we've now got 5 results instead of the original 4, and you've got that new mapping that's been put at the top there. And it really is that easy. Just select the field that you want and then plug in those values, and it will add those fields for you. As Richard mentioned, this is where we've got our auto fix rules. So these are all of the rules that have been built into the app already that would enable you to fix issues from those logical inferences. To make changes to these, if you click on edit, as Richard said, you can then toggle this auto fix on or off according to what you prefer the app to do. So that's all manageable directly from there. It's also possible to exclude people or contracts from the return if you have a need to. So you might have somebody that was a duplicated record, something that was created in error. Normally, obviously, you wouldn't be excluding at this point. It would be for those exceptional circumstances only. So it is possible to actually just exclude that person from the return, either before you make a load of data by clicking on exclude on load, and then adding a person number into the row here and saving that information. Or once you've loaded data, you can then exclude people by clicking on either the run person exclusions or the run contract exclusions. If you remove a person, it will remove their contracts. If you remove a contract and it's the only contract, it will remove the person record. But if it's somebody that has multiple contracts, it will just remove the contract that you identify with the cont ID in the box below. There is also a section where you can include staff. So if you've got staff coming in from a different source that you need to load separately, you can load those here. So that's all in terms of the setup of the field mappings, how you would access everything. The next step is to actually put some data into the app. So what we're going to do is just upload some files that we've got ready for the demo. So we're going to upload a person, a contract and an activity file just for the purposes of today. Click on upload, and then I'm just going to drag and drop a CSV across into there. It will give you a preview of the information that's contained within that file. And then when you click load data, it will confirm how many rows have been processed and the data is finished loading, and click on done. What you can then see is that this holding count has increased from 0 to the relevant value. And this is one of the first places where you can now go through and start to fix some of your data issues. If you open up this find invalid data option, you can see where you've got unmapped field values in your data that you might need to resolve upfront before you make any further changes. You can see that at an individual level. So it will tell you the HESA field, the problematic value, and then the staff ID and own staff ID that's affected. Or you can look at that as a summary level, and it will give you the HESA field and the unmapped field value just so that you can plug those in. As with the other field mappings that we've seen, these are all downloadable. So you can click on actions and download for a full list, which is particularly useful if you want to look at it at an individual level. But in terms of the HESA value summary, where you've got volume of issues, this is a great place to identify some quick changes that you can make. So in this scenario, we've got BSL as an issue, and mapped value should be 0, 2 instead of 2. So what we'll do is we'll just go through, we'll show the volume of issues here by searching for BSL, and we've got a range of people that this has been affected by. What we're going to do at this point is we're going to go back to our previous step and add in the field mapping that we need to fix that problem. So we're going to go to add field mappings. The source value is 2. and we're going to add a mapped value of 0.2. We're going to add that. Go back to your field mappings and search. You can see that that's been added. And we're going to then at this step go forward to next step again. We're going to look back in the invalid data, and we can see now that there is no invalid data relating to BSL. I'll clear that off and just search for it again so you can see that change come through. And on the HESA values summary, there's now no row here for BSL. So it's a really quick way of dealing with a mass of potential issues. You can also pick up when you've got the information in, if there are any orphaned contracts or orphaned activity, and any mandatory fields that may be required that haven't been populated. So in order for us to move on to the next step, I'm just going to load these other files. So we'll upload our contract file.
While Dawn's doing that, so where we say about orphaned, what we've seen in the past is you have separate extracts for your people, your contracts, contract activity, all of which might have subtly different filtering values. And what that's checking is that you haven't got a contract that doesn't have a person, and indeed you don't have contract activity that doesn't have a corresponding contract. Do I need to buy you more time or should you click load?
Nope, that's fine. Thank you, Richard. Okay, so we've now got our relevant data for now uploaded, and you can see all those values in the holding count. And what we're going to do is click on populate. So this will push the data through. At the point that you do this, if you come back to this step, these holding counts will revert back to 0, and you'll no longer be able to see any invalid data that's associated with the return. And we can then move on to the next steps to show you how the app works from here on out.
And what you saw there was when Dawn was loading those CSVs, they weren't 10 people. It was 2,000 or almost people there. Even if your institution, so University of Birmingham, they're 10,000 people that they load through this because there's also casuals. Performance on an Oracle Cloud infrastructure just isn't a problem. Greenwich, for instance, used to have, it was literally they pressed their reports and it was 8 hours later until they could get them into any prescribed format. This that you've seen here is seconds.
And as Richard was saying, it will give you an overview here of what's actually been loaded into the system in this box that pops up once the populate's complete. So if we click on our next step, this is where you can then start to see the data as it will look for the different files that you've uploaded. So we've got a people tab, we've got a contracts tab, and what you'll notice is for the person that you've got highlighted in this tab, it will show you the contract for that relevant person. So it will follow that person through. From here, you can make changes. So if you wanted to, you could edit this row and you could say, I'm going to put ability to teach in Welsh, and we'll pop a value in there and you can save it. We would always recommend that you make these changes in your source system. Otherwise, every new year, every time you come to make a submission, you'd need to make those changes again if you don't lock the records. So it is possible to lock the records and then upload another file without overwriting that information that's being changed. But best practice would be to maintain that in your source system where you can and where possible. If we then click on the next tab, this is where you can lock those records. So the app knows that I've made a change to this person's record because I made a change in the previous screen, and it will offer this up to automatically the option of being locked. So that would be, you can then select if there are multiple rows, which ones you might want to lock and which ones you don't. And you can then search for different parameters, who's made the changes, which fields have been changed, when have the changes been made. So you can see a specific cohort of people depending on what information you're wanting to see at this point.
And I think with this one, it's worth saying it's not even just those you've edited as well. It may be that your return is perfect, it's ready to go out the door. However, there's another field, just a single field you need to update. So let's say all your HR data is perfect, but you need the ORCID from a pure or a research system. Or next year, your ref unit of assessment, you might be taking that from a research information system. So what you could do is lock every single column value bar the ref UOA fields, the two of those, and your ORCID, and you can keep retrieving from your source. So you keep loading in new CSVs, and the only field, the only column it would update is the ones that you haven't locked.
Thanks, Richard. So yes, as Richard was saying, if you want to pick particular columns to lock, you can do that from this drop-down list here. You can move them all across if you wanted to, and then just move back the one that you didn't want. So I've done that the wrong way around. If you leave them all here, they'll all be locked. You can then move them over and bring back an individual field if you just want to lock one column. So you can customize that as you need to, depending on what your requirement is. In the next step, this is where we can look at the reporting and how you can bring that data out of the system to then pass on to other people if needed, for other institutional purposes. So you can toggle on the different elements that you want to include. You can then extract the people that have been entered. So if you have made manual changes in the return and you wanted to extract a new copy of the CSV file, you could do that from here by going to Actions again and download. And you can do that with contracts, contract activity, and supplementary changes. You can also see an audit here. So anything that has been done in terms of audit and actions, they will show on this page. So everything that has been done by a particular person is trackable and traceable. You can see whether it's an insert or an update, and you can see the old and new HESA values. So everything that may have been updated in the app, you can pick up on that audit view there. Next step. So this is where we'd actually then validate the data against the HESA business rules. So in order for this to pull through, we need to click on refresh. So this may take a minute just to pull everything in, and this will run your data against the HESA business rules that have been defined for that reporting period. Richard, these get updated every year as well.
Yeah, they do indeed. So we're already, I know the quality rules haven't been published, or it wasn't the other week, at least when I checked, for next year's return. But around this time of year, our tech team start looking through that and seeing what additional quality rules that we'll be checking against. And indeed, we canvass our user group as well to say if there's a logical inference that can fix it, we'll apply that as well.
So this is, I think, one where the ability to download is particularly valuable. So you can download this in a range of different issues, different formats. We'll just download this as a CSV for now, and then we can open that up. And I'm just thinking I've shared my window rather than the screen, so I'll need to.
What's probably for summary, if we go into the bar chart view, so Dawn's absolutely right. You can see the full extent, and you could also, if you'd uploaded supplementary information, so let's say you'd also uploaded the forename, surname, school, department, college, you can have that extract in this report. And what that's really good for, as Dawn said, is really you want to distribute that across those areas. So let's say you've got HR business partners for certain areas. You can say, here are all the HESA challenges in your department. Go canvas, make sure you get the right data, correct it at source, so the next time you're not seeing the same errors in our app.
Yeah, so the Excel output will allow you to filter by field name, so you can see where the validation issues occurred. It will give you the severity level as well, so whether it's an error or a warning, and then it will bring you back an error code where that exists, as well as the text of the actual validation error. So it will give you a really good idea of what it is that you need to fix, and you can then bundle those up. So if you've got somebody specifically looking at the person data, as Richard said, you could send it to that person. If you've got somebody that's specifically looking at the contract data, you can then send that to the relevant people to make sure those validation issues are cleared up.
To give you an idea of scale, so if I take Greenwich as an example, they average on first load about 10,000 errors. Obviously, you've got 4,000 odd staff. They can have 3 or 4 reasons as to why HESA thinks the data isn't in the right format. That first upload and clicking refresh and running the validation fixes tends to remove about 2/3 of those to 3/4 in that first pass alone, leaving them with a manageable subset that they can then fix those big hitters. So we haven't changed our list of values, we need a new mapping, whatever else, right the way through to, right, we've got this individual. And the errors that you can see on screen at the moment are, of course, because we've got dummy data in here, where we've purposely removed a load of personal identifiable information and we've stripped out salaries and the rest. So one would hope your data is nowhere near as bad as this dummy data. But even if it were, you could get a sense of how quickly you could, through logical inferences, fix that data.
So once you're happy and you've refreshed this information to apply the fixes, or you've corrected your source data and then reloaded those CSV files by going back to that populate step, when you're ready, you can click on next step, and this is where it will actually build your XML file that would be ready to send to HESA. So to do that, all you would need to do is click on the build button. Under the build options, there are a couple of toggles there. If you wanted to just create an academic only return, you could toggle that on. And if you've got people that are joint between more than one HEI, the settings for that are also enabled there as well. So if we click on build, what that will do is then it will generate the an XML preview and an XML file that you can download, and then that is what you would use to upload for the HESA return itself.
Spot on. And whilst that was 2,000 odd people you saw then, again, it's seconds, it's not even minutes. So to give you an idea of end-to-end, Greenwich, there's a case study in our site where they were, even to just get to this point, it was days. So days in extracts, days in manipulating the data, days in actually, in some cases, going right to the XML. And now from source, they can get those reports into our tool, use the auto fixes, and within minutes, end to end there, they could be pressing build and getting a new XML file out. So it really is, and if you look at that across the whole end-to-end process of how many times you're going to be going through this iterative process to get your data issues fixed, if you can strip what used to be days down to minutes, then your whole HESA cycle time, instead of being an annual exercise that you've got to get it right once, you can start doing this monthly because all of the technical barriers are removed. And then it acts, instead of a data collation tool, it's a data cleansing tool, because you're constantly getting your data up to date month on month, as opposed to waiting for what can be an arduous year-on-year process. And with that, folks, I promise I'm not going to slide. We wanted to have the last 5 minutes on questions, so I'm not going to take all of that with slide content. I thought I'd just finish on one final thing. So just to say, we are a uSizer member. On our uSizer showcase, you can see we've got data sheets and references and case studies on some of this, but equally we're happy to send out any information, or as opposed to our marketing collateral, which is lovely, Sam. It really is.
Always.
You can just talk direct to those organisations and say what their experiences have been. And rather than read the press release and the case study of Greenwich, or talk to the folks at Birmingham, or the materials we've got on Birmingham, talking to those institutions who've gone through that and seen how much time this can save. And it's not just time in that sense, then it becomes cost as well. How many times have you got single points of success within your organization that are those HESA experts who should be doing 1,000,001 other things, but you lose them for at least a month, a year, and probably longer than that on nothing but data cleansing and data hell. And with that as well, procurement route in terms of any next steps, if you're happy and you want to proceed with us, the procurement really is genuinely easy. It's straight into G-Cloud 14, single source agreement, below a threshold that would raise too many eyebrows, and can literally be implemented in a matter of 4 weeks. And with that,
just a couple of questions, I think, Richard, just more clarification than anything else. What systems can be integrated with to get the data, or can it be integrated with other systems?
Yeah, absolutely. So folks, in that sense, it's endless. As long as you can provide a, Dawn showed you their CSV loading, but regardless of your legacy system, you have currently got a situation where you're getting an XML file out. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sending a return year on year. This system can upload the XML directly as well. So all of those affordances that you've seen of loading the data, cleansing it, modeling it, allowing for amends, even if you just provided the XML, the tool can do all of that for you. So Sam, in that sense, there really isn't a limitation. It just so happens if you happen to be an Oracle customer, there's even more value we can add in addition.
Okay.
And sorry, you've directed me to the questions.
It's just the Q&A section. So the only other two are, is the system updated to keep track with HESA staff changes? I think you answered that one earlier anyway.
Correct, yeah. So new fields, new quality rules, and indeed new lookup values, which is effectively our mappings. We keep that up to date year on year. Every year we send that out to the full user group to say these are the changes we're intending on making, and we listen back for feedback. So if there's, I'll take the case of the example I gave earlier happened to be that disabled one. That was based on our user community coming back and saying, I know you've added that there can be multiple values. What if? And based on that, it's, that's of course, autofix. We'll add that as well to this year's return. So about this time of year, we'll do that. And from January, February, March, you'll see us iteratively work through that. And the only reason that it's iterative tends to be that HESA, you'll see in their release notes, they make incremental changes. So we're looking at that to make sure the tool is legislatively compliant at every point.
Yeah. And then just one more question from Kerry. Can I check, please, the initial population is based on CSV upload rather than integration to our HR system? We don't have Oracle HCM.
So great question, Kerry. Like I said, we're agnostic. You could do CSV upload, you could do XML upload. And if you've got endpoints within whatever tooling you have that are standard APIs, we could just connect directly into those as well. That'll take a little bit longer than the 4 weeks. You would probably start testing with you and making sure you're comfortable based on an XML upload, but yeah, all achievable. It's rare for any modern day HR system not to have strong APIs. Kerry, and I don't know if you can talk, unmute or whatever. Does that answer your question?
She's got one more question. She takes
yes.
it has answered. But yeah,
yes.
Can you bulk exclude records, or do you have to exclude individual records?
It will work on bulk. So let's say you've got an instance where in your source system, you've got whole categories of data. Let's say, go back to Dawn's point. Let's say you couldn't change your extracts for whatever reason, but you only wanted to include academic people. There's nothing stopping you putting an upload of CSV of these are the people we don't want in this year's return. And it won't even load them if you tick that box. It will just consider those who aren't in the exclusion list. So Yeah, in bulk or an individual. So whether that's, you've got somebody on secondment who for whatever reason doesn't have a contract with you in the traditional sense for HESA, but does from a HR sense, you could exclude them on an individual level as well.
Great, thumbs up from Kerry. So there's no more questions. I don't know if anybody has any more. Don't think so, not unless someone can't type that fast. No, I think that's it. So I guess it just leaves me to say thank you, Dawn and Richard, and thank you everyone for joining us today. If you do have any further questions or anything like that once we've ended the webinar, please just get in touch and we will get them answered. Thanks very much.
Thanks
everyone.
everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye.